Quick warning before we start the video. This video will be talking about the contents of a show that goes heavily into topics such as suicide, murder, abusive relationships, and sexual assault. If you are sensitive to any of these topics, please watch this video with caution, and if at any point in this video you feel too uncomfortable with the topics discussed, feel free to skip ahead or click off the video entirely. If you need to skip a part of the video or stop watching entirely, I understand. Your safety is what's most important to me.
You know I had to wear the Veronica Sawyer outfit for this. You know I had to. Also, I feel like the background's a little plain, so... hearts!
Freak, slut, burnout, bug eyes, poser, lord-ass.
Hey guys! What's up? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. So in case you didn't know, I did a poll on my Instagram and my Twitter asking which video you guys wanted to see as my first ever YouTube video. A Be More Chill album comparison or a Heather's album comparison. And Be More Chill actually won that poll, but I already made that video, so go check it out if you haven't already. And now I get to do my Heather's video. So Heather's. Obviously, I love Heather's. It took a bit of warming up to get into it when I first watched it, but now I can really appreciate everything about it. Like the songs being complete bops that blend into the story well and don't feel forced in or out of place. Or all the things it has to say about things like suicide, toxic, abusive relationships, sexual assault, and more. This show has so much to say about so many things, and I like that. And those who are familiar with Heather's will know that there are two different cast albums for Heather's. There's the original Off Broadway cast album, and then there is the West End cast album that was created later when it moved to, surprise surprise, the West End. And of course, the creators of the West End version of Heather's made quite a few changes when moving it to the West End, which is shown in their cast album. So which of these changes improve on the original? And which one is better, the Off-Broadway version or the West End version? Let's finally look into it and find out by looking at each song from the album. Also, I might talk a bit about the overall production outside of the songs, just cause it's my video. Also, disclaimer, these are just my opinions, aka the opinions of a simple, lonely, mentally ill musical fan. So no one is subjected to agree with my opinions, nor am I forcing anyone to agree with them. In fact, go ahead and put your opinions in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of my opinions. Just be respectful, please. Also, no hate to any of the actors I give criticism to. I respect all of them for their performances, and I'm happy for them that they had the opportunity to play these parts. However, this is an album comparison video, so criticism is to be made. Also, for this video, I'm going to be giving points to whatever side I think did each song better. I was going to do this with Be More Chill, but I thought it was kind of pointless because over 90% of those points would have gone to the Two River Theater version. But anyways, let's start off by looking at the first song in both albums, Beautiful.
But I know, life can be beautiful.
So the first thing about Beautiful is that in the Off-Broadway version, which from now on I'm probably just gonna call the Broadway version. I know it's technically different things, and I'm sorry if that annoys anyone, but it's just easier to say. Anyway, the first thing that I noticed about it is that it sounds more real. It actually feels like you're in this high school with these teenagers, whereas in the West End version, it just feels a little off. I also don't like the change of Kurt's first line in the West End version. In the original, his first line is, "Martha dump truck, wide load!" And then he slams Martha's tray to the ground and laughs in her face, and it's funny and wonderfully chaotic. In the West End, they changed it to, "Martha dump truck, if you want to lose a few pounds, you need more protein in your diet." And then he shoves the middle finger in her sandwich, I believe. And I don't know, it just doesn't feel as intimidating, and it just doesn't seem as funny or chaotic to me. Also, I don't like how they had someone else besides Martha say, "Why won't he date me?" In the original, it was Martha resenting the fact that Rand doesn't seem to care about her anymore. And now it's just some random ensemble members saying it, and it doesn't hit as hard. There are a few things that I do like about the West End version of Beautiful though. Like the way Carrie says some of her lines. Like the way she goes, nothing. Nothing. Or how she goes, "Look at you," before she says, "Your high school has been waiting to happen." To me, it gives off this lecturing mother vibe that I really like for some reason. So a lot of people seem to really like the harmonies in the West End version. And I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. Sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, that's a nice harmony." And other times I'm kind of like, eh. Like for that "something to live for" line, all the harmonies kind of blend together too much for me, and it almost doesn't sound like it's multiple people singing that line. The interlude for the Heathers' entrance though is really great in the West End version. It really gives off this "here come the queens" vibe. Speaking of the Heathers, Heather Duke's throw up in the West End sounds so fake. Like, Broadway's can arguably sound fake, but it sounds especially fake in the West End. I do like how the Heathers actually protest against Miss Fleming when she gives them detention in the West End version though. So for the performances between Barrett Wilbert Weed, the Broadway Veronica, and Carrie Hope Fletcher, the West End Veronica, the scene where they're asking for a boon kind of varies between the two. Barrett's Veronica seems a bit more anxious about the whole situation, kind of like oh my gosh, I'm talking to the queen bees of the school, what am I doing with my life? And she seems like she's sort of making it up as she goes along, while Carrie's Veronica seems quite a bit more confident about what she's doing. And honestly, I don't have a huge preference for one over the other, but I think I lean a little more towards Barrett's version just because it feels a little more real. But I can appreciate Carrie's delivery as well, and I think they're both pretty solid versions of the scene. Before we get into the finale of the song, I have one thing to say. The "Don't You Dare Touch Me" line has such low energy in the West End version. Like the girls in the Broadway version sound pissed about this guy touching them, while in the West End version it just seems like they're saying the line just to say it. What up with that? Anyways, the finale. Both girls do a great job singing it. Barrett's version is just beautiful. No pun intended, I just noticed that. And the high notes she can sing are so impressive, while Carrie's just has this wonderful power to her version of it. And even though she can't sing the high notes that Barrett can sing, I think she still made it work really well. Both of these girls have my heart with their talents. Anyways, I think I prefer the Broadway version because overall it just sounds more real and natural. And I like certain parts in the Broadway version more than the West End. So 1 point for Broadway. Now let's move on to Candy Store.
Honey, what you waiting for? Welcome to my candy store.
So the first thing about Candy Store, Jessica Keenan Wynn, the Broadway Heather Chandler, is overall better at being a bitch in my opinion. Merry Bitchmas, everyone. Elle McLemore and Alice Lee are also better at sounding like mean girls. The voices also blend together for me in the Broadway version. Jessica's final belt is also better in my opinion. Jodie Steele, the West End Heather Chandler, just feels like she's trying too hard for me. And if there's anything you need to know about Heather Chandler, is that she don't need to try. She's already rich, she's already popular. She basically has everything she wants, or she could just get anything that she wants. And I don't know, to me, Jessica just does it all so effortlessly, while Jodie just seems to be trying too hard with her belt and her overall performance as Heather Chandler. I also don't like how she does a bunch of yas at the end of her belt as opposed to an extension of store. So overall, yeah, Broadway definitely has the edge on this one for me. Now on to Fight For Me.
Wanna fight for me?
Okay, so for Broadway, Barrett's performance is better in the beginning. Barrett's just kind of better at singing those beginning lines, and I think the higher key of the song works better for that beginning part. Also, I just love the way Barrett says, damn. Also, kind of a side note, but everything is just better in the Broadway version visually. Like, I don't like how the West End darkened everything. It's hard to see the super funny slow motion fighting. But anyways, the West End version dominates over Broadway in all other aspects of the song. I think the lower key actually helps it fit in better with the rest of the soundtrack. It also sounds a bit more like a punk rock song while also still sounding like a pretty sweet love song. And as someone who dreams of playing Veronica someday, I appreciate the lower key being easier on the voice. And Carrie's performance in the song is great as well. You can really hear the adoration, the hearts in her eyes, and all the little giggles that she adds just makes it seem more real. Like she's just this teenager with a silly little crush. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to give it to the West End for this one. Now let's move on to Freeze Your Brain.
Freeze your brain!
First thing about Broadway Freeze Your Brain, Ryan McCartan sounds like a JD. And overall, I think that's something that Broadway just gets so right. Like, Barrett sounds like a Veronica, Elle sounds like a Heather Mack, Alice Lee sounds like a Heather Duke, and Jessica sounds like a Heather Chandler. And I can say that about pretty much every character. And maybe it's just me, but I don't really think anyone in the West End version sounds as perfectly fitting for their characters as they do in the Broadway version. Ryan's voice is also so smooth and so charming, and I love that. For West End, one thing I don't love is Jamie Muscato's accent for JD. I get that it's supposed to be a reference to how JD's moved around the country so much and therefore absorbed all these different cultures. But much like the surfer accent for the Squib and Be More Chill, JD with a country accent just kind of keeps me from taking him as seriously, and it doesn't feel as threatening to me. However, it's not as annoying to me as the accent for the Squib in Be More Chill, and much like Be More Chill, the accent doesn't bother me as much when I'm watching a live performance. Other than that, Jamie's Freeze Your Brain is... He has this sad boy energy to it, which I like. He also has this vibe to it. Like, Ryan's Freeze Your Brain is a cool guy sort of being an underdog vibe, while Jamie's version is like a genuine underdog vibe. Also, this may be weird to say because this is a psychopath talking about slushy self-harm, but Jamie's performance is also like sort of more cute and sweet in a way. And oh my gosh, his finale. You just really feel the emotion in it. And you know that moment of silence that happens after the "don't open a vein" line? Jamie's delivery of that line really hits me. And in that tiny moment of silence, I just really kind of think like, wow, this is a seriously messed up and traumatized kid. So which of these versions is better? It's really hard, honestly, because both Jamie and Ryan give such stellar performances of this song. Overall, I think Ryan is the better singer, while Jamie might be a slightly better actor. I think I'm going to give it to West End though, just for the emotion. So now let's move on to Big Fun.
Big fun, big fun, big fun.
Is it just me, or does the West End Big Fun feel super auto-tuned in certain parts? Anyway, I'm a little mixed on the different dialogue changes that they made in the West End Big Fun. The added part with Veronica and Heather McNamara is cute, and I love me a good Veronica-Heather McNamara interaction. But I also think that the original was more realistic. In the original, you really get that vibe of, as Veronica puts it, the Heathers being people she works with and their job is being popular and shit. Taking away that dialogue just makes everything feel a little less mean, and I think that it needs that meanness. I also do enjoy how they changed the lyrics to Veronica being more popular, but I think it sort of simplifies the storytelling to me a little bit. Like, in the original, you didn't need the lyrics to say that Veronica was becoming popular. You could see it. Also, side note, but I find it really funny how Barrett Wilbert Weed got a line about weed. She probably gets jokes about her name like that all the time. Imagine how funny it would be if the person writing this song knew that Barrett Wilbert Weed was playing Veronica, so they decided like, oh, we gotta add a line about weed in here somewhere. Also, the way that some of the lines are delivered are just better in the Broadway version, like the Martha Dump Truck in the Flesh section. Or Ram's, "Are you trying to poison me?" line. He sounds more pissed off in the Broadway version, which I like. Also, Ram doesn't spit on Martha in the West End version, which I thought was funny and I miss that. However, one thing I think the West End does do better is the laughter at the end. It sounds more fun and genuine. So I definitely think overall Broadway pulled off Big Fun better than West End. Now let's move on to Dead Girl Walking.
I need it hard. I'm a dead girl walking.
One of the funniest things I find about Dead Girl Walking is how it's one of my favorite songs, and I'm an asexual lesbian, while this song is about heterosexual intimacy. My thoughts are going to be a little bit scattered for this song, so bear with me. I think Barrett's voice is a bit more fitting for this song. She just has this punk rock edge to her voice that is really fitting. I don't know why they changed the line, "Sorry, but I really had to wake you," to "Had to see you, hope I didn't wake you." All it makes me think when I hear that line is, oh, they changed the line. Also, I know there's a problem in Broadway and like musicals in general about having really high notes in songs for the main characters, leading to lower toned voices like altos and baritones and basses not having as many opportunities to play main characters. But I'm also kind of part of the problem. I love the high note that Barrett sings in this song. I know all the belting that Barrett did in this show kind of left to her damaging her voice, but honestly, I think that all the notes are pretty possible to sing without damaging your voice as long as you have the right techniques. But I'm not trying to trash on Barrett or anything, and I'm not saying for sure that she didn't have the right techniques. I don't know her life. Honestly, I think Barrett damaging her voice in Heathers could be a whole video on its own. But yeah, I just like the sound of the higher note better. I can't help it. However, I can really appreciate Carrie knowing her limits, and she makes the lower note work well enough. I also like how it sounds more like they're screwing in the West End version. So, although the West End version is solid, I think I'm gonna have to give it to Broadway for this one. I'm having a hard time finding a reason for why besides it just sounds better to me, but overall I think Broadway just has this polish that the West End version doesn't have. Now let's move on to The Me Inside of Me.
No one sees the me inside of me.
I think that Barrett made Me Inside of Me feel more real, especially in the beginning. The way she's awkwardly saying the lines really sells how Veronica is making everything up on the spot, and also really sells the shock that Veronica's going through at this time. Jessica also did a better job at sounding innocent in the beginning, which I like. Michelle Duffy is also just a better Miss Fleming in general. However, I do like the line change from "This is the loveliest suicide note I've ever read" to "Have you read it? Really read it?" It feels more genuine, and I feel like the original just feels kind of weird. Like, how many suicide notes have you read, Miss Fleming? However, this is the only dialogue change I really like, and I don't really like any of the lyric changes. I do appreciate the West End making more references to the movie, but Veronica's "I haven't felt emotions like this since Hands Across America" just feels out of place in an adaptation that's humanizing Veronica more and making her more empathetic. Also, the lyrics that the students are singing in the Broadway version feel more sympathetic, while the ones in the West End just feel kind of bad. Also, one thing I'm sad about is that they changed the Heather touching me line. Originally, a girl sang this line, making it gay. But then the West End made Curtin Ram sing it, and now it's not gay anymore. Boo! And overall, the West End version kind of takes away a lot of the queer coding that was in the original. Like, they take away the kiss between Veronica and Heather Duke that was in the original musical and the movie. I mean, I can understand that the actors weren't really comfortable with that, but like, that was a really iconic scene from both the movie and the original musical. Also, in the original version of the scene where Martha talks about her suspicions about Curtin Ram's murders, officially named Martha Suspects by Jenny O'Leary, the West End Martha, there was this dialogue that was kind of funny, and it kind of gave some more queer coding for Veronica.
Looks like Veronica's going to lady prison. Girl on girl. Punch it in!
In hindsight, this might be less so queer coding and more so Curtin Ram kind of just sexualizing queer women. But anyways, the West End version kind of hints at Ram liking Martha back, which I wouldn't mind too much. We stand bisexuals. If it weren't for the fact that Curtin Ram feel less gay in the West End version. So, TLDR, it just feels like they're making everything more straight in the West End version, which I do not appreciate.
Surprise, surprise, I like queer representation in my media.
I apologize for going on a bit of a tangent there, but this needed to be said. Anyways, I think it's pretty clear which version I like better here. Broadway version all the way. Now, let's move on to probably the most controversial song in Heather's, Blue, or You're Welcome for the West End version.
You make my balls so blue.
You hurt them badly. You're welcome. Look where you are. You're welcome. You won the football star.
So in case you didn't know, the West End turned Curtin Ram's song Blue in the Broadway version to a completely different song, You're Welcome. While Blue is funny and catchy and overall more gay than You're Welcome, which I enjoy, but overall, I just don't really like Blue. It kind of turns sexual assault into more of a joke. We've been over this with Do You Wanna Hang? Why does Broadway keep doing this? Also, the Heathers are actively encouraging this in the Broadway version. They are actively encouraging these two guys to basically gang rape Veronica, their friend? What? And in the West End, the Heathers kind of initiate the situation, but they're not there actively encouraging it. Though, honestly, I don't know which one is worse. Both versions are kind of just messed up in their own ways. I think the moral of the story is what the Heathers do in this scene is just bitchy and messed up. Anyways, Blue just kind of makes me uncomfortable in general. I can't really explain it. There's just this personal, general uncomfortability I have with it. You're Welcome, on the other hand, handles the situation much better in my opinion. It defines the woman experience so well. They have Curtin Ram blame Veronica for them wanting to get with her because of the way she dresses and her wanting to be popular. They say that she should be grateful for having someone as awesome as them, football stars, being interested in her. Also, I like how Veronica uses self-defense to get away from them. The original version of this part is cool too, with Veronica using her wits to get Curtin Ram so drunk that they're too wasted to do anything. But I like how the West End makes Veronica look more like a badass. Also, this song is a bop. Like, I jam out to it even though the lyrics are awful and misogynistic. Wait, this sounds familiar. From being the loser, the geek, or whatever. Sick of being the loser, the geek, or whatever, yeah! Anyways, I guess I should talk about the morals sort of regarding You're Welcome. There's been some criticism saying that it makes Curtin Rams seem worse than they actually are. Like, in the original, you could see better that Kurt and Ram are just being stupid teenagers, which I kind of agree with, but Kurt and Ram are just kind of misogynistic rapists. Like, that's just kind of who they are, and I don't think it's right to shy away from that. And you can't use the excuse that they're 17, okay? They should know better. If y'all are going to rip on Evan Hansen for the things that he does and say that he's 17 and he should know better, then you can't excuse the things that Kurt and Ram do when they are both the same age as Evan and generally worse than Evan. Anyways, the song to me doesn't so much make Kurt and Ram look worse as much as it just kind of highlights how awful they are more. Also, some people say that this gives JD more of a reason to kill Kurt and Ram because it makes it seem like they're more of an active threat. But I don't entirely agree with that. For all JD knows, Kurt and Ram didn't even interact with Veronica and they just worked with Heather Duke to create this stupid rumor. The reason JD goes after Kurt and Ram is because Kurt and Ram make Veronica cry. And they even make a point to have JD say this multiple times in the show.
They made you cry. Did they make you cry? Yes. Can they make you cry now?
So personally, I feel like it still works because the reason JD goes after Kurt and Ram isn't because they sexually assaulted Veronica. It's because they make up this three-way rumor and they make Veronica cry. Wow, I had a lot to say about those songs. Anyway, yes, I'm a person who prefers You're Welcome over Blue. Yes, we exist. So yeah, this point is going to the West End. Broadway 5, West End 3. Next up, we're going to talk about a song made specifically for the West End, sort of. Never Shut Up Again.
I will never shut up again.
So much like Synced Up from Be More Chill, Never Shut Up Again takes place of what once was Blue Reprise from the original musical, which wasn't recorded on the album. So they basically took a small reprise and turned it into a full fleshed out song. So is it any good? Yes, actually. Heather Duke finally gets the solo she deserves, and it's a damn good one too. It really shows you how Heather Duke feels in an awesome villain-like song. It feels better in the story emotionally, and it's a full-on bop. I also like how Heather Duke has a really cool quick change into a red outfit, much like how in the movie she changes into a red outfit after Heather Chandler dies. And it's something I think the original was missing. Though I feel like they always put the quick change in a weird part of the song.
It's my turn! It's my turn! I've been like Finish this my song!
Like, I feel like it would have been better to put it here. The only downside of this song is, as awesome as Tashawn Williams sounds, and as much as she kills it, she just doesn't sound like a Heather Duke. So it does make it sound just a little bit off. I would really love to hear Alice Lee or someone who sounds like her sing this song. So yeah, this song improves on Blue Reprise in many ways, so West End gets a point. Now let's move on to Our Love Is God.
Our love is God.
So I think the acting is better in Broadway overall for this song, and Jamie's accent doesn't help. The music also just feels a little bit off in the West End version. The different dialogues fit well for their respective versions, though I think I prefer Broadway's dialogue just a little bit more. Carrie's flirting in the West End version sounds a little more seductive, and I'm not sure how to feel about that. It sounds more deliberate, while Barrett's Veronica sounded a little more playful and jokeful and clueless. And I think that more playful, jokeful, clueless Veronica fits better for the scene. So yeah, overall, I think the Broadway version is just better on this one. So another point for Broadway. So now let's move on to Act 2 and our Act 2 opener, Dead Gay Son.
I love my dead gay son.
So both versions of Dead Gay Son are kind of just the same, except for a couple of lyric changes that don't really matter to me. I don't get the point of them. Overall, I just kind of like the sound of Broadway better. The only lyric change that's really sticking out in my mind is the one where they changed the "and why chose to let our boys get busy in the shower" to something about being like, you can't help the one you love. And one's just funny while the other one's kind of sweet. And they both kind of just like, they're both kind of the... Never mind.
Hi, this is Editor Eve. So apparently I just couldn't talk in this video for some reason, so I'm here to kind of articulate what I was trying to say. I think what I was trying to say was basically that both lyrics get the point through, so the change is kind of unnecessary to me.
Also, there's something about the way that Anthony Crivello, or is it Crivello, and Daniel Cooney in the Broadway version say "like our boys would have done" that just gets me in the feels for some reason. So yeah, Broadway version is better in my opinion. Another point for Broadway. Now let's move on to 17.
Can we be 17?
Oh my gosh, both of these versions are so good. The Broadway version sounds so beautiful and has this wonderfully romantic melancholy to it. While in the West End version, you can really feel all the emotions Veronica is feeling. All the sadness and frustration mixed with the love that she still feels for JD that she doesn't want to give up on. Honestly, it's hard for me to choose one over the other because they're both such solid interpretations of the song. However, I think I'm going to give Broadway the edge on this one just ever so slightly because of the big grand finale of the song where they both go, "Tonight." It's done better in the Broadway version, and I feel like that's one of the most important parts of the song. So borderline, but Broadway gets the point on this one. Now let's move on to Shine a Light.
Shine, shine, shine a light on your deepest fear.
The West End version of Shine a Light is in a lower key than the original, and it's just kind of a change that exists. I like the way Rebecca Locke, the West End Miss Fleming, sings "Disappear." But overall, both versions are kind of the same. And Broadway just sounds a little bit better. And again, Michelle Duffy is just overall a better Miss Fleming. Also, I don't really love the way that Rebecca Locke delivers the third verse of the song. And I don't think anything can top Michelle Duffy's awesome belt at the end. So I'm going to give it to Broadway for this one. I hope I'm not sounding too biased towards Broadway. I just generally think Act 2 is better in Broadway. Anyways, let's move on to Lifeboat.
The tiniest lifeboat with the people I know.
So again, the key is different in this song, which I don't really know how to feel about. It makes it sound more eerie and creepy, which I like. But overall, I just don't know if it really fits. It just feels like they're making the key higher for no reason. I also don't really love Sophie Isaac's extension of Lifeboat. And overall, Elle McLemore just captures the emotions of Heather McNamara in this song that Sophie Isaac just doesn't. Like literally when you're watching her live and she's about to perform this heartbreaking song about her suicidal thoughts, she's literally smiling in this scene. And it's like, why are you smiling? You are about to talk about your suicidal thoughts. That doesn't make sense to me. Also, this doesn't really have anything to do with anything, but I just realized that Elle's last name sounds really similar to Heather McNamara's last name, and I just find that really funny. Anyways, yeah, Broadway gets another point. Let's move on to Shine a Light Reprise.
Oh, look, Heather's going to whine, whine, whine all night.
To me, Alice Lee is just a better Heather Duke overall. She just captures this bitchiness that Tashawn doesn't quite capture, and I think it shows here. To me, it just sounds like Tashawn is just trying too hard to sound talented. And she is talented, but just look, there are moments where it is okay to like show off your stuff, but I feel like this just isn't one of those moments. Also, they changed the bitch and moan line. Why? It was a perfect reference to Candy Store, and now it's just replaced with a line that's significantly worse and ruins the reference. So yeah, Broadway definitely wins this one. Now let's look at a new song that was specifically made for the West End version of this show. I Say No.
I say no.
Okay, I may be a bit biased towards this song because I kind of relate to it. We're about to get up close and personal right now. I would prefer not to, but I also feel like I need to explain why I like this song so much. I was in a pretty toxic, controlling relationship at the time I first heard this song. And I really liked it then, but it didn't mean as much to me until about a year after I cut ties with that person. And I listened to it again, and it almost felt like I was listening to it for the first time again, because it just kind of hit me that these were really similar feelings to how I felt when I felt the need to end that relationship. So I may be kind of biased because this song means a lot to me, but also this song is just really good in general, and it's become one of my favorite songs in Heathers. This song is just so beautifully written with a beautiful melody. You could also really tell it was written for Carrie, and I mean that in the best way possible. It just fits her voice so well, and she does a great job singing it. Some people may argue that this song is emotionally redundant because we already have a song where Veronica is standing up and saying no to JD, and that's Dead Girl Walking Reprise. But I don't think that's entirely true. The very first time that Veronica actually stands up against JD is the moment when she first breaks up with him. And this moment was done perfectly fine in the original, but maybe just not as big of a moment as it could have been. This song turns it into the big moment that it deserves to be, and I think it fits because this is the first time that Veronica is standing up to JD. So I may be a bit biased, but I just really like this song, and I think that it adds a lot to the original scene and makes it a bit more memorable. So I'm going to give a point to the West End for this song. That may not be fair because there's not really anything to compare it to on the Broadway side, but this is my video, damn it. Also, West End could use a point. It deserves it. So now let's move on to Kindergarten Boyfriend.
My kindergarten boyfriend and I.
This is gonna be a short segment. So all I'm really gonna say about this song is that I think Katie Ladner, the original Martha, does this song so well. She just captures all the emotions that Martha is feeling in this moment so well, and it makes for a really hopeful yet heartbreaking performance. Jenny O'Leary, on the other hand, although she sounds lovely and has this admirable power to her performance, just doesn't really capture that emotion that Katie captures. So yeah, that's all I really have to say. I'm gonna give it to Broadway for this one. Next song, Yo Girl.
Yo, girl, keep it together.
Broadway's Yo Girl has this creepiness to it that the West End version just doesn't have. I think part of that has to do with the performances. Like, Alice Lee's delivery of the opening lines feel more eerie than Tashawn's performance. Also, Baird's Veronica sounds like she's about to cry and throw up because of all the stress and fear she's feeling from the situation, while Carrie's Veronica just feels like she's in shock. I also think part of it has to do with some of the lyric and dialogue changes. Like the, "What's that brimstone-y smell" line? What? It doesn't make sense at all. Like, the original line, "She's not looking so well," really hammered in on the guilt Veronica was feeling because she knew she was part of the reason Martha tried to take her own life. Why did you remove that for something way worse and doesn't even make sense? Same thing with them taking away the "he's got your handwriting down cold" line. Like, that was a clapback to the way Veronica forged all the suicide notes. Also, the conversation between Veronica and her parents just doesn't really make sense to me in the West End. Like, they talk about sending Veronica to a shrink, and then this is never brought up again. Also, I really like the dialogue in the original where her mom is genuinely trying to be comforting, and the irony of her saying, "Your problems seem like life and death," when Veronica's problems pretty much are life and death. I also think Ryan kind of does better at sounding like a psycho in this scene. Jamie just feels like he's trying a little too hard. Like, Ryan doesn't even need to try, and he sounds pretty creepy and psychotic. Anyways, yeah, Broadway is definitely getting the point on this one. Now on to Meant to Be Yours. Both Ryan and Jamie do a great job with this song. They both sound great while also sounding psychotic. Ryan gives off this really great undertone of a child having a tantrum, while Jamie's added psychoticness really suits the performance. I feel like acting-wise, both Ryan and Jamie are on par with each other. I really enjoyed both their takes on JD. Jamie's take is a little more emotional, which I think he's really great at, and it really humanizes JD in a pretty good way. And Ryan's, although more emotional than the movie version of JD, still stays on par with that movie version quite a bit. Ryan's is kind of like a great mix between movie JD and Jamie's JD, and I feel like Meant to Be Yours is a solid example of this. So as much as I love Jamie's performance in this song, with the combination of Ryan just being a slightly better singer and me overall enjoying Ryan's take on JD, I think I'm gonna give it to Broadway for this one. Now on to Dead Girl Walking reprise.
Heads up, JD, I'm a dead girl walking.
Much like Dead Girl Walking, I feel like the high note just sounds better for Dead Girl Walking reprise. And I feel like Carrie just didn't really make the lower note work as well as she did for Dead Girl Walking. Speaking of Carrie, I feel like her emotion just doesn't match up to the emotion Barrett gives in this song. Barrett just gives such a fire to her performance, and you can kind of feel that like this is the last thing that Barrett's Veronica wants to do, but she knows that if she doesn't do it, everyone else will die. You can also really feel her emotion in the "I wish your mom had been a little stronger" part. Speaking of that part, JD saying "don't talk about my mom" in that part is fine. It could have been better if they just left it at "don't talk about my mom." But then as Veronica continues, they have JD go "stop," and it just kind of kills the added emotion for me. Also, in the West End version, they go "go Rottweilers." Why? It also just kind of feels like Jamie's overselling the insanity a bit. So yeah, Broadway definitely wins this one. Next up, I Am Damaged.
I am damaged.
So West End rewrote the lyrics for this song, and it kind of ruins it. The original lyrics were, "I am damaged, far too damaged, but you're not beyond repair," which I feel represented how JD still cared about Veronica and still saw potential in her. Then the West End turned this to, "I am damaged, but you're different, you're the one we ought to spare," which just feels more generic. Also, the original version just felt like they explained why JD thought Veronica deserved to live better, saying that JD was too broken to go on, but Veronica isn't. While the West End version is just kind of, "you're different." But that's not the worst lyric change they made to this song. The next lyrics in the original are, "Stick around here, make things better, 'cause you beat me fair and square." Which kind of shows how JD seems to have learned that what he did was wrong. He was trying to fix the world through hate, while Veronica was trying to fix the world through love. And he realizes that his method wasn't going anywhere and only making things worse. It feels like he's sacrificing himself to make up for the heinous things he's done. And then the West End changes these lyrics to, "God knows why you want to save them, but you beat me fair and square?" What? Did you not learn anything from everything that's happened? And not all villains and antagonists need to learn anything or realize that what they did was wrong, but this happening with JD humanized him, which I liked. It's like he doesn't really care about anyone except maybe Veronica, because it seems like he's only doing this for her, which really muddles down JD's character to me. Even worse, the original lyrics would really fit well with Jamie's more humanized take on JD. But no, they had to change them. Wow, that's another song I have quite a bit of feelings for, despite not listening to it all that much. Anyways, yeah, Broadway definitely gets this one. So before we get into this next song, I wanted to talk a little bit about the overall production of the West End version of this show. And it's the rewrite of the dialogue of this scene, or the scene before it. In this scene, Veronica thinks she killed JD by shooting him and decides to take the bomb JD planted away from the gym and sacrifice herself to save the school. And the rewrite of this scene just doesn't hit the same for me emotionally. Veronica just straight up thinks out loud what she plans to do.
If I move the trigger bomb far enough away, it can set off the thermals, right?
And it just sort of takes me out of the moment because it feels more like we're watching a scene, we're watching a performance. Also, there's this common phrase that people use in media, show don't tell. And this rewrite feels a little more tell-y now.
Smart girl. Bring the trigger bomb out here to the football field and nobody dies.
It's also rewritten to make Veronica look more like a hero, which would be okay on paper, but it kind of takes away a significant part of Veronica's character that's present in both the movie and the original musical. The fact that she's suicidal, or at least it's implied pretty heavily. In the movie, she's shown to have a desire of self-harm by burning herself. And self-harm doesn't always mean that someone is suicidal, but it could definitely be a symptom. Also, there's this scene that kind of felt off to me the more I thought about it. In this scene, Veronica starts writing in her diary, saying things like how it's her last entry and,
"Let's see how the son of a bitch reacts to a suicide he didn't perform himself,"
referring to JD. And in the context of the fact that this is a movie, and this is to make people watching it think that she's going to kill herself, but then, surprise, she's still alive. But I started to think about how if that was an actual series of events that happened, someone could find that note, read it, and think that Veronica genuinely tried to kill herself. Also, it doesn't seem like she specifically wrote it just to further convince JD, because JD doesn't seem to see that entry when he finds her hanging. So yeah, I just always found that interesting. Anyways, in the original musical, Veronica sort of speaks in a way that hints at her being suicidal, saying things like, "The irony of this is that I never got to write my own suicide note," and saying how she doesn't deserve to live. The West End changed this to Veronica saying something along the lines of, "I still think there's good in everyone. Maybe that's why I'm willing to die for them." And then they make the scene with JD trying to take the bomb away from Veronica more about Veronica's distrust in JD than about how Veronica doesn't think she deserves to live.
No way. It's a trick.
I just feel like the original version of this scene just hits harder emotionally because you can really see how broken Veronica starts to become because of everything that's happened. And I feel like this rewrite just takes away an aspect of Veronica's character that really humanized her and made her more interesting. With all that being said, gosh, this girl talks a lot. Let's move on to the final song of the show, 17 Reprise.
Always be 17.
Both versions of 17 Reprise are pretty good. The emotions are good in both, the harmonies are great in both. The West End does solid harmonies throughout the whole song, and I really love Katie and Barrett's harmonies in the original version. I also like both lyric interpretations. We want a better world, so why not start tonight? It's a nice little sentiment about taking action when you want to or feel you need to. While the original version, one day we'll change the world, but let's kick back tonight, is a nice little message of, yeah, we could do great things, but let's just be teenagers for now. Which is a nice sort of retelling of one of the mottos of the show. I also think that Carrie's "blew me off" is really funny. I think both versions are pretty good, so I'm gonna give this one a tie. Points for both productions. Don't judge, okay? I could have given a lot more ties throughout this, but I restrained myself. Anyways, great job to both productions for being a solid ending to this great musical. Alright, let's look at the final score. Drum roll, please! So we have Broadway at 17 and West End at 6. Okay, so yeah, Broadway is definitely the better production in my opinion, but that shouldn't take away from what a solid production the West End version is. There were a handful of times where I really wanted to give a tie for both productions, but was a little worried about some people saying that I was giving too many ties. If you're curious, if I did give out the other ties, it would be Broadway at 17 and West End at 8.
So after some reevaluation, I decided that I probably would have given one more time maybe, so it would have been 8 or 9.
So yeah, Broadway is definitely the better production, but I think the West End is more than worthy of a listen and or watch. In my Be More Chill video, I talked about how the Broadway version of Be More Chill didn't really add any changes that felt justified or felt like they improved on the story. This is not the case with Heathers though. Although there are some changes that I don't really like, there are plenty of changes here that do improve on the story, or at the very least, I can understand why they wanted to make the changes that they did. So I think what we can take from this is that Heathers the Musical is just great, and I think you should listen to and watch both versions of the show. My ideal perfect version of Heathers is honestly a mix of both versions. Thank you guys for watching this really long video. So, what do you think of Heathers the Musical? Which one do you think is better, Broadway or West End? Also, if you have any suggestions for videos you'd like me to do, let me know in the comments as well. Stay tuned for my next video, and check out my Be More Chill video if you haven't while you wait. I also posted a cover of Stupid with Love from Mean Girls if you want to check that out as well. But for now, I'll see you next time in the next video. Bye!
We'll make it beautiful.